Hey guys, welcome back. Mama Dr. Jones, OBGYN, and Mom to 4. Today we're talking about something that has been on my mind for like a decade. I mentioned it briefly on Instagram stories, and one of you said, you should make a video about that. It would make a really great video. And you know what? I agree. So today we're talking about things that social media taught me about being a better physician that I never learned in medical school. I got started in social media in 2010, I think, blogging as a medical student, and that was really unusual back then. It was going to be just a way for me to document my journey, but it really ended up being a nice creative outlet and something to use the other side of my brain that I wasn't really using just memorizing and learning book stuff in my first 2 years of medical school. My friends thought it was really weird because people were blogging at the time, but people weren't blogging their journey through medical school. I realized really quickly that I could make a positive impact by sharing my journey and being open about myself while also learning from the experiences that people shared with me. If you go on my Instagram or my TikTok, you'll see that most of what I do is talking to you guys. My persona on the internet has never been, I'm a big doctor in a white coat and I know everything. It's always been, I just am your friend who happens to be a gynecologist. And sometimes we talk about my life and my kids. Sometimes we talk about the crazy things that are happening. And sometimes we talk about medical and GYN and obstetric things. I took that persona on the internet a decade ago when it was not really something people did. In fact, when I applied to residency, I was told that I should hide all my social media channels because it was unprofessional. I decided not to do that and instead put my social media information on my CV, including a lot of writing and blogging and articles that I had done. And it ended up being a really positive aspect of my application. I think it works because you guys want to see something about your doctors that humanize them. The first thing I learned as a medical student being on social media is that I had this opportunity to take medicine back, if done correctly, to a time where you knew the neighborhood doctor. You knew where he sat in church on Sunday. You knew his kids. You went to school with them. Y'all all played baseball together and he was a coach on the weekends. That gave a certain level of trust between the physician and the patient. Now, with medicine being so corporate and doctors seeming to be so closed off, I often feel like patients have to really work hard to know that they can trust their physician and to know that their doctor is in their side and doing things for them, which is terrible. It should never be like that, but medicine has become that. And so the first thing I learned being on social media as a medical student is that we can earn your trust here if we do it the right way. I figured out really quickly I wanted this to be a part of my life long term. I started with another friend of mine a social media advisory committee as a medical student. We got to go to some really cool conferences and really set the framework for a more positive social media experience for medical students, because at the time it was basically like, don't get on social media unless it's totally protected and you're not sharing anything about your life publicly. The second thing I learned is that this is my traveling CV. I told my medical school way back then that no matter where I went, my patients could look me up and when they Googled my name, that they could see the real me. Because otherwise you get very skewed results when you Google your doctor. You either have really great reviews from the patients who really like them, or really terrible reviews from somebody who had a very bad experience. You don't get an idea of like the doctor as a person, but we all know a lot of what goes into how well you mesh with your physician is their personality. What I found from number 1 and number 2 is that being on social media allows me to present myself to you as I am, which is exactly what some patients want and exactly what some patients don't want. And you know immediately by watching one of my videos if I would be someone you'd want to see in clinic. And then when you come into my clinic, that baseline level of trust that I was talking about in the olden days of medicine, when the family doctor was the neighborhood doctor or the city doctor and everybody knew him personally, is kind of there. I noticed that my patients who find me through social media, we have this baseline level of trust. They found me there first and decided I was someone that they would put their healthcare trust in. And that's important to me. And so we have connected on this level where we get to skip the small talk, where the patient's trying to figure out if they can trust me, if I have their best interest in mind. And we jump right to the important part of your visit, talking about what you came to talk about. The third thing that I learned is how incredibly valuable it is for physicians to get out of the physician space online. So when I was talking earlier, I said, I've always been intentional about talking to you guys about this being a two-way conversation where you can ask me questions, and obviously not your personal health questions, but just general questions like what's the incidence of miscarriage, and we can talk about it and have a conversation about it. But what I saw was that a lot of doctors and medical students were talking to each other online. There's benefit in that, don't get me wrong. I did a lot of talking, and I still do a lot of talking with other physicians on social media and as a medical student with other students. I value social media so much more from a standpoint of hearing your voices. I wrote a blog about this in 2011 and then again in 2012, and basically said, patients sharing their story online, and the first kind of community I came across is the infertility community, helped me learn empathy and understanding about these complicated loss situations and difficult fertility journeys in a way that medical school and residency never could have taught me. We basically approach patients with the knowledge that we've got in our back pocket that is molecular and biological and pathophysiological and pharmacological. That's not a word. All those ologies that we learn as students. And then we have this other pocket that's our experiences and the additional learning we get in our training. That's only so limited in how many patients that you get to see, especially before you're the person caring for someone going through something like this. And you only get one chance not to make that worse for them. What I learned by reading stories of infertility and by reading stories of loss was what these patients felt was lacking from their care. And that's essentially what was lacking from my training and medical school training. I would say that very quickly, I developed a very keen sense of how to have a better bedside manner. Now, caring for patients with infertility and loss is one of my true passions. It's very hard, especially something like recurrent pregnancy loss or term stillbirth. You're never going to make that situation better. By reading these stories, I understood how to keep from making it worse. The biggest compliment that a patient ever gives me is walking through a horrible, terrible situation and then coming back to me to see me as their doctor in the future. The reason is because it's very reasonable when you go through something tragic that you would want to distance yourself from the person who is associated with that. As your doctor, you see me as someone who should be protecting you and your baby. Sometimes things are out of our control, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't help your mental state to distance yourself and find a new provider next time. When I can navigate with a patient the process of loss, and they can come back to me in the next pregnancy and put that trust in me again, there will never be a compliment someone can give me as big as that. I would attribute my ability to care for people going through situations that I don't personally understand completely to social media. As a medical student, what I did was join these forums and say, hey, I'm very transparent. I am not going through this. I just want to read your stories. I want to be an observer. I want to learn from you. And with open arms, they would welcome me into these communities. The endometriosis community is another one that I learned a lot about this way. Video coming on endometriosis. I hear you. I'm working on it. Anytime you guys request videos and I'm not making them, I'm not ignoring you. I read almost every comment. I obviously can't read all of them, but I try to read as many as I can, especially in the first hour after I post. So turn on your notifications. I try to make a video on everything, but I'm only one person. It's coming, I promise. Endometriosis and fibroids and all kinds of things that you guys have requested. Anyway, that was a tangent. I think that I learned from social media how to take better care of patients going through tragic things that I don't understand on a personal level and things that they don't teach us the personal aspect of, the patient aspect of in medical school. Number 4 is from the endometriosis community. What I learned is how much, and also from the infertility community and loss community too, but how much these diagnoses and things that we see in clinic as a 15 or 30-minute visit affect everybody in their day-to-day life. Sometimes we view diagnosis as something that happens, in our clinic. The patient is sent on their way and you hope that you helped them. What I learned from reading these stories online is that these chronic conditions permeate every aspect of your life. If I, as a physician, am not listening to you, you get the feeling that nobody is listening to you. And this starts to extrapolate into other parts of your life. But I also noticed that the patients who had physicians who listened to them, really listened to them, even if we couldn't help, we listened and we tried. And when we couldn't help, we said, I don't know, let's find you someone who does, or let's look this up together. That those patients left and went to social media and said, I'm so sorry that you have a doctor that doesn't listen to you, find someone better. Because I'm in as much pain as you, and I feel as desperate as you to have a baby, and I am as lost as you in this journey, but my doctor is on my side, and that means a lot. I guess that's twofold. Is one, the importance of listening to your patients, because these things affect their life every single day in everything they do. And two, the importance of acknowledging when there is a gap in my knowledge and they need to see someone else, and acknowledging the importance of us working together to make them feel better. And the number 5 thing that I have learned from social media that medical school could never have taught me is the importance of this two-way conversation, not just online, but in my clinic. In medical school, we are taught to talk, and we're taught to listen, but I don't know that we're really taught to communicate, to hear the things you're saying that maybe are hard for you to say because it's something you don't understand, or how to approach patients who are what I call personal health researchers, who know probably more about their rare condition than I do. What I learned online was how to have that conversation. You guys have taught me so much in my clinic and here about things that I learned in medical school, but either could do better on or could word differently, from taking care of the LGBTQ plus community to taking care of infertility and miscarriage and endometriosis and all of these things. You've just taught me so much, and that wouldn't have come without me realizing that it's not just listening to you and talking back to you, it's communicating with you. And that's why I try to have, like I said in the first part of this, a really open communication policy with you guys and with my patients. I hope that by making this video, I can share this with other people in the medical community so that they can understand why it's important to follow patients on the internet. And when I say that, I don't mean I'll ask for your Twitter handle when you're in my office and follow you. I say that when I'm talking about patients sharing their stories, like Sierra Schulze has shared her story of miscarriage and of PCOS and infertility, and Tati has shared her story of endometriosis. These patients are patients. They're people on the internet, they're personalities, but I follow them because they teach me about my patients. They teach me about how I can be better for you and for my patients. And I am so passionate about this, and it's so important because it's such a huge sea of information for us as healthcare providers in the one area that I think is massively lacking in healthcare right now, which is personal interactions and the ability of the patient to teach the physician. I just want to thank you guys for everybody who has openly shared their stories of anything related to pregnancy or gynecology, the transgender community, talking about how difficult it is for you to find inclusive language in healthcare and especially in gynecology, for talking about how hard it is for you to find providers that validate you, for people who are talking about racism in medicine. What we're missing is us listening to your stories and figuring out the solutions. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your stories in my comments, on your own social medias, on your blogs, whatever you're doing. It makes a difference to your fellow humans and to your physicians and everyone else. In the comments down below, if you have something you want me to talk about, let me know, medical or just chatting. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, and if you're still here, you liked it at least a little bit, give it a thumbs up. Kind to yourself, to each other, to me. In the comments, be kind, and I will see you next time.